your God power. Get everything you ever wanted and live the life of your dreams. The Master's Course. Copyright 2010 by Richard Lee McKim Jr. All rights reserved. Let the quest for knowing begin. However, in our radio example, just because the physical tuning representation was broken or didn't work like it normally used to, does that mean that the radio could not be used anymore? Does it mean that it could no longer be tuned to any station that we wanted anymore? No, it doesn't. The tuning function is still working perfectly, just like it always did before. It is just that the link or beliefs and meanings that connected the tuning representation to the actual real tuning function is no longer working due to being damaged. However, you still could use a screwdriver or even use your fingers and tune it by hand. Okay, let's take a look at this next illustration. It says, these are two different ways that the real tuner could still be tuned without using the tuning knob and dial. You could turn it by hand or even use a screwdriver. Now we've got two pictures here, and we're looking at the bottom of the radio with the black pulley that goes to the actual tuner that's connected directly to the variable capacitor, which is the real tuner. Now we see in the one picture we got a screwdriver on it, and you can easily see that as you turn the screwdriver, you're going to turn that dial. And on this other picture, you can see that I'm grabbing it with my fingers, and I could easily turn that dial with my hand. So even though the string no longer ties the tuning dial, the real function, to the representation of the dial, we see that the real tuning function is still viable. The functionality is still real. It's still there. It still can be tuned to any station you want. All you got to do is just tune it in with your hand or tune it in with the screwdriver. So we see that even though the representation was damaged beyond repair, I actually tried to put that string back on for another picture, but it wasn't going to happen. Once that string came off, that was it. That radio is never going to be tuned again. So I can tell you for sure that that representation system is damaged beyond repair. That tuning dial will never, ever tune that radio again. But it doesn't mean that radio can't be tuned, because the functionality, the real place, the real functionality is still viable. It's still usable. It's still tunable. You don't have the representation system. That's all. You don't have the representation system that it had. Doesn't mean you can't have a new representation system. I could very easily take a piece of cardboard, stick it up underneath that tuning dial, and mark little dashes on it indicating the different stations, and you could easily tune that dial to those stations easily. But the important thing about this illustration is that you can still access the real tuning location. You can still access the real tuning functionality still, even though the representation is no longer working. Even though the representation is damaged beyond repair, the functionality is still there. The functionality is still possible. It can still be used. Okay, let's continue on. In our earlier example, the woman who could no longer see with her eyes used her beliefs and meanings to connect her real seeing function with her fingers instead. Like the radio example, just because the representation is damaged, it doesn't mean that you can no longer use it. It just means that you need to access that function in another way. Remember the Russian woman that moved her ability to see from her eyes to her fingertips? That was an expanded arrangement of her beliefs and meanings. This woman could see with her fingertips, but not her eyes. We also saw many other examples where people linked their true, real seeing ability to the tip of their nose, to their left earlobes, and even to their armpits. Okay, let's look at this next illustration. Here we got the represented in the normal blue oval is the real seeing function. Now that's going on in the energy level. That functionality is still there. It can't be lost. That functionality is immortal. That is the real thing. That can never be lost or damaged. Okay? So now we see that the beliefs and meanings in the eye, apparently the eye was damaged. So as a result, the beliefs and meanings said that the eye is no longer usable, so it can no longer act as the representation. That's the same thing as the radio function. You see, the tuning dial, once the string came off the pulley, could never be used as a representation again for tuning. And this person's eyes were damaged, so they couldn't use their eyes as a representation for seeing. Now, is that really true? No. But because their eyes were damaged, their beliefs and meanings said that they could not see with their eyes. So, that made it true. But you see, they have another beliefs and meanings link down here. Look, there's another relationship that's been set up between the seeing function and the fingertips. So there's a new link. There's a new relationship. The old relationship is defunct. The relationship, it's still there, but the relationship says that there's no link anymore. There's a new relationship that's been established, and that says that where the tips of the fingers are, seeing can be had. So that's a new link. There's a new relationship there. There's a new beliefs and meanings link between the seeing function and now a different represented place, a different physical representation, which, interestingly enough, doesn't have, rods and cones and lenses and optic nerves and all that kind of thing. The beliefs and meanings have linked the seeing function to a place that you wouldn't expect to see from. Okay, because the representation is so wild. But still, that's where it's linked. And as a result, because of the beliefs and meanings, that's where you can see. Okay, let's continue. Remember the hypnotist demonstration of the woman who could taste what was in his mouth? When you have a tasting function in your energy form, the blue oval, that is linked to your mouth by your beliefs and meanings, and your tasting function in your energy form, the blue oval, is also linked to a hypnotist's mouth by your beliefs and meanings, then when you use your taste sensation, the beliefs and meanings dictate and facilitate that you will taste something in your mouth and also be able to taste something in the hypnotist's mouth as well. This woman could taste what was in somebody else's mouth. Okay, let's take a look at this illustration. Now here, once again in the blue oval, is her real, true, functioning place in the energy realm. That's the tasting function. Okay? Now, through beliefs and meanings, her tasting function is linked to her own mouth. Now, we pretty much all have that. There may be some people who don't, but most of us, in our normal beliefs and meanings, taste what's in our own mouths. Okay? That's the tasting function. Okay? That's the link. But, look at this. She's got another association. She's got another relationship. She's got another link that's been established by beliefs and meanings between the tasting function and somebody else's mouth. So not only is she linked her own tasting function from birth to her own mouth, but due to the hypnotist's suggestions, she has now linked her tasting function with his mouth. So not only can she taste what's in her mouth, she can taste what's in his mouth. How did that happen? By an association, by a relationship, by a link established by beliefs and meanings between her tasting function and someone else's mouth. So here the tasting can go, and the tasting function can be in two places, can be used in two ways. Now in the prior illustration, we saw where the seeing function was no longer happening with the eyes. Because the eyes were damaged, the beliefs and meanings, the relationship said that they no longer work. So as a result, they don't. But there was a new relationship set up to connect the seeing function with the fingertips. Now on this one, the tasting function was still working. It was still in effect. She just added on another relationship between her tasting function or another relationship to her tasting function that connected her tasting function to the hypnotist's mouth. Okay, let's continue. With this arrangement, you can taste all the food that you wanted to without gaining any weight. This ability comes from an expanded set of beliefs and meanings that allow and include tasting in another person's mouth.
To continue, go to How to Use Your God Power, chapter number 10, segment number 63. Let your quest for knowing continue.